Hi there. I have got one of the greatest guests I have had on the podcast. Dr. Ibram X. Kendi joins me today to talk about his brand new, already best-selling book. It's called Chain of Ideas, The Origins of Our Authoritarian Rage. Of course, he wrote the book How to Be an Antiracist, which is where I found and first interviewed him, and several other books as well. And I'm real excited to share a conversation. We were live yesterday. If you want to watch it on YouTube or Substack and go subscribe over there, that would be great. And if you want to skip right to my interview with Dr. Kendi, it starts at 34 minutes. Thank you to everybody who joined me at last night's stand-up subscriber hangout. We had like 70 people there, I think, and we were there for well over 2 hours. Lots of laughs, lots of conversation, lots of ethical questions that we were asking each other about life and family and pets and more. Such a great, thoughtful, very intelligent group of people who also have jokes. A lot of jokes, as always. You can watch it in delay or on tape, I guess. I mean, it's in the cloud, and I share the link if you're a subscriber with that daily email that you get, including today's vitamin N, where I include your nature photos, and I need some. It's spring. Let's go. Come on. Get on the nature photos. Hashtag vitamin N. Send them in. StandUpWithPete@gmail.com. Everybody, you should feel a certain sense of loss, maybe even guilt, if you don't get outside. I'm not going to tell you to feel guilty if you don't take a picture, but if you don't get outside, I'm sorry, you should not feel guilt. I shouldn't be shoulding you. Get outside, send me pictures, no man-made objects. All right, well, happy Friday to you. TGIF. Am I right? I am distracted this morning from the hangout last night, and I had to wake up and do CNN this morning. And so I was just preparing for that. They had me on the very end of the hour just to talk about this week's White House Correspondents Association dinner and the fact that they didn't invite a comedian, but they did invite a mentalist. I'll bring you the audio of that brief conversation I had with CNN's Jessica Dean this morning, and then we will get to the rest of the clips. I've got your headlines coming up, but remember, I can't do it without you. There are no ads, but I always have to say this right here at the opening of the news segment where Sean Nielsen says I should place it, and then again at the end. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic is the place to go. Please sign up there. You can also Venmo me. A couple of you have done that over the past week, and it is very helpful. Thank you very much. The Venmo link is also in today's show notes, along with all the information about this and every day's show. All right, let's do headlines. Time for the shit show. Starting with the war that we began in the Middle East. Let's see. General Fatton said that Israel and Lebanon had agreed to extend their ceasefire by 3 weeks. The country's leaders didn't comment, and today Israel said it had struck Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. So shocking that the president's word is no good, and that journalists have to dig into and verify everything, much less those he's negotiating with. Reporting from the New York Times now, General Fats Moreland said he had ordered the U.S. Navy to shoot and kill any boat. They didn't call him General Fats Moreland. I said that. They call him Trump. He said he ordered the U.S. Navy to shoot and kill any boat that is laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz, the vital maritime shipping route that has become central to the U.S.-Israel war with Iran. There is to be no hesitation. Additionally, our minesweepers are clearing the strait right now. I am hereby ordering that activity to continue, but at tripled up the level. He wrote that. He wrote that. That's not actual audio. That was me. He wrote that on Truth Social, which just lost like $700 million, and he fired Kevin Nunez, who he had running the joint, because of course any remotely legitimate business under his guidance will fail, because he's the worst, and everything he touches dies. But also he said, I'm ordering the activity to continue at tripled up the level. I ordered them. I said to Pete, triple it, don't quadruple it, but definitely triple it. Whatever you're doing, triple. Okay? It's so cringe. Okay, the U.S. drained its supplies of costly weapons fighting Iran, says reporting from the New York Times. Some estimates put the price of war at nearly $1 billion a day. What could that get us here? Iran is not exerting absolute power as his slain father did. Apparently, no, it's a group of Revolutionary Guard generals that is effectively running the country. So that is a story worth reading, and a lot of other outlets with similar reporting. More from the New York Times. The world's largest condom maker is raising prices by up to 30% because the war affects its raw materials supplies. So now it's even affected. You even have to think about Trump when you're having sex. If you're having sex, young people are going to see who has sex with condoms, all those people. Okay, safe, good. They're good for you. I'm not saying don't use them. I'm just going to keep talking. How about this? The head of the International Energy Agency, her name is Faith Byral. She was on CNBC, and she said the world is facing the biggest energy security threat in history as a result of the Iran war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The world's biggest energy security threat in history, and the world responded to that with the same response, all because of one man who gets up in the morning and paints himself. He paints himself. Why not just start there? When you first saw that he's a grown man that paints himself that color every day and does the fake comb over to cover his balding head, which he had operated on and it failed, and he got really mad. Like, didn't you know, like I knew then, just when I saw him, I was like, oh no, that's not a person you should trust, because everything about his head, the top of him isn't to be trusted. The very first, most important part, his head, is all fake and phony. So why would I care about anything that comes out of it? How come you didn't know then, everyone in the world with a normal head says? Well, okay, what else? The Justice Department told prosecutors to revoke the citizenship of hundreds of foreign-born Americans. Great. Here's more. The Department of Justice also loosened legal restrictions for medical marijuana. That's good. This is bad. Did you hear about this? A soldier, one of the Special Forces SEALs, I think, who went on the raid to capture Nicolas Maduro, he used classified information to make a bet on one of the betting markets. And then he won $400,000. And now he's been arrested. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing that they caught him and he was arrested. And apparently the stupid president was asked about this in the White House yesterday. And he was like, yeah, you can bet on anything. I guess he probably shouldn't have. It was like Pete Rose. He really did. He really said that. He compared him to Pete Rose is all. He wasn't seemingly outraged. Also, he shared on a podcast episode. He was on a podcast and he referred to China and India as hellhole places. So he called the two most populated countries in the world hellholes. That's good. That should be good for us. And also there's reporting in the Times that a Maha coalition of vaccine skeptics, organic moms, and environmental activists who helped elect Trump are disillusioned. And they might not turn out again. That's reporting from the New York Times. Also, and other stories from other outlets, everybody reporting on his comments about renovating the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. He called it filthy. He called I run around that every time I go to DC. I run around the reflecting pool and along the reflecting pool. And last year when I was down there, I saw a guy sweeping it. He was walking through the water with a giant mop, getting all of the kind of algae and growth, manual labor on a very hot morning. And I was very impressed with him. Talked to him for a little while. So that personally, this has really upset me to hear him say that. But everything he says is upsetting, of course. On Capitol Hill yesterday, while most Americans were asleep, the Senate adopted a Republican written budget resolution that marks a critical first step toward providing roughly $70 billion for immigration enforcement for the remainder of General Fats Moreland's term. After a marathon, quote, vote-a-rama on amendments that stretched through the night, the Senate voted 50-48 for a budget blueprint, laying the groundwork to pass a filibuster-proof budget reconciliation bill for immigration enforcement funding. That bill could bypass Democratic opposition and help end a record-breaking partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. In a related story, Senator Lisa Murkowski and Rand Paul broke ranks yesterday morning, voted against that budget resolution that could set the stage for ending the 2-month shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. So there you go. Let's see. The list of Trump nominees quietly is growing longer. His long-stalled pick to lead a key U.S. cybersecurity agency, a guy named Sean Planky, withdrew his name from Senate consideration Wednesday, saying it had become clear to him that lawmakers would not confirm him. So there's that. How about this? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has received a 2026 Nobel Peace Prize nomination. They nominated him. Somebody who can nominated him. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's kind of a big deal because how is that going to make our crybaby feel? They highlighted the international recognition of their resistance efforts, the Ukrainian people and Zelensky nominated for Nobel Prize nomination. And finally, good news. I like to end with very good news. The rate of suicides among young people in the United States has dropped 11% below projections since the rollout of the 988 suicide prevention hotline. It dropped even more significantly in the states with the highest number of calls, according to a new study. And nearly 4,400 adolescents and young adults are alive, we think, they say, because of the program. The Department of Health and Human Services introduced 988 in July 2020 with bipartisan support and $1.5 billion investment for the crisis centers that field calls. It replaced a 10-digit hotline number, and it appears to be working, and we were happy about that. That's good news. That's great news. And now it's time to get to the clips that I brought you. Clip show. Let's start with Madeleine Dean, Congressman Dean, questioning Trump's Commerce Secretary and very good friend and business partner of Jeffrey Epstein. You might have heard this, but I'm including the whole back and forth. Real good, real important, and very revealing.
Start with your relationship with sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. In October, you told the New York Post with colorful narration that the last time you saw Jeffrey Epstein was in 2005 when you took a tour of his house, which happened to be right next door to yours. You claim you and your wife were so grossed out by this disgusting person, you swore you would never go back. But when the Epstein files came out, it turned out that was a lie. You were forced to admit that you had visited Epstein's private island in 2012, 4 years after Epstein pled guilty soliciting a minor for prostitution and was labeled a sex offender. You brought along your wife, your kids, your nannies to the predator's island. Incredibly poor judgment. But that even wasn't the whole truth. It turns out that 5 days after visiting his island, you and Epstein signed a business deal together. As co-investors in a digital advertising company, Adfin, an email showed you stayed in touch with Epstein about this deal as late as 2018. Secretary Lutnick, why did you lie to the New York Post about your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Oh, I did hear that. Please don't repeat your gracious offer to speak behind closed doors, not under oath, without the ability of this committee to question you. The American people wants to know, why did you lie about your relationship with Epstein?
House Oversight Committee and I have agreed.
We will
the appropriate time
reclaiming
together.
My time. I do not accept that answer. We've heard that one. We are our own committee. We have our own reason to test your credibility and veracity. Please answer the question. Why did you lie to the Post?
I have voluntarily agreed to spend the time and talk about it.
I reclaim the time. Let the record reflect you're dodging the question. The cover-up continues. You know what? In your conversations with the president, is the president concerned about your continued relationship that you had with Mr. Epstein as recently as 2018?
I'm not going to discuss conversations I have with the president. That is not something I'm going to do.
If you remember in that interview, you said you would never be in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. President Trump has just fired 3 cabinet secretaries, 3 women, Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, Lori Chavez-DeRemer. If President Trump has even a shred of concern about accountability for Jeffrey Epstein's enablers, he would fire you too. Beyond Adfin, what other financial ties do you have to Jeffrey Epstein?
As I said, I'm going to answer all these
Beyond
questions.
Adfin, what other financial ties? You're the Commerce Secretary. We have a right to ask this question and get it answered.
Again, I'm not going to spend the budget day discussing something I've set aside time to spend on this topic.
I'm going to
with your
switch
House
topics.
colleagues.
Let me switch topics.
That's what I've got for you from that yesterday. It'd be very interesting to see what, if anything, comes out of his closed door testimony in front of the Oversight Committee to those questions. Those same questions will be answered. What the hell is he going to say? Okay, let's get to my appearance on CNN this morning, talking to CNN anchor Jessica Dean about the White House Correspondents' Dinner without a comedian and with a mentalist. I don't think you'll be surprised with my analysis and critique. This is about 4.5 minutes, so hang in there with it. You might hear a little great Obama from back in the day.
And some of that reporting on Epstein will take center stage at the White House Correspondents' Dinner tomorrow night. The Wall Street Journal will receive the group's top honor for their report on a letter Trump allegedly sent to Epstein for his 50th birthday. You'll remember the president called the story fake and sued the paper for $10 billion. That lawsuit was ultimately dismissed. The reported author of that note will also be in attendance. President Trump is set to attend and speak at the dinner for the first time as president. Joining us now, Pete Dominick, comedian and host of the Stand Up with Pete Dominick podcast. Pete, great to have you. I think I just kind of laid it out in terms of all the competing dynamics that are going to be happening at that dinner tomorrow night. Trump obviously has been attacking the media, suing them constantly. The Atlantic summing it up this way. In just the past 15 months, he has sued news organizations, threatened to jail journalists, repeatedly suggested taking broadcast licenses away from TV networks that have reported stories he didn't like, and so on and so on. And so what might tomorrow night be like?
Well, unfortunately, it won't be anywhere positive for democracy or a real celebration of the First Amendment because, Jessica, they didn't invite a comedian. And the reason why they didn't invite a comedian is because they knew our thin-skinned, insecure, immature, sad, mean, terrible president wouldn't come. And why shouldn't they? I mean, comedians are there to speak truth to power. I was at that dinner 5 years in a row, and I also worked for Stephen Colbert at the Colbert Report. And every night, at every taping of the Colbert Report, there was always an audience member who remembered his performance at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I believe in 2006, when he questioned George W. Bush while he was right by his side, and his failure to find weapons of mass destruction. It put Colbert on the map, cemented his legacy because he spoke truth to power in a way right to the president at the time that too many journalists weren't doing. And the same is the case for now. By the way, this president wants to jail journalists and who are reporting on the Iran war. You know, he wants them to be brought up on charges of treason, which is a punishment by death. You have to have a comedian at this dinner, and they don't. They have a mentalist. What in the Sam Hill is a mentalist? I mean, he's going to make people believe that you can read minds and that he's a psychic. Americans already, too many, believe that the moon is made of cheese. So it's bad. It's bad for America. It's bad for democracy.
And look, you mentioned past dinners. Obviously, Trump has his history with this event. There is that moment, and I think it is a key moment, when then President Obama joked about him. He was in the audience. This was in 2011. I just want to play a quick clip.
In an episode of Celebrity Apprentice, at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. You didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night.
And later on, there was a lot of talk that that moment really affected President Trump and pushed him toward potentially running. But this, to your point, this dinner has the potential to create moments over the years like Stephen Colbert with George W. Bush, as you mentioned, like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important element of this dinner to have a comedian there to speak truth to power, to make fun of the president to his face, and journalists and journalism as well. I don't know if that moment, I think that moment gets too much credit. He was already the chief birther before that, right. But he does and has committed to getting revenge on anybody who makes fun of him in any way. And there's so much material, and all of that material, including everything around the Epstein files and this war of choice, would be on center stage for any self-respecting comedian. For the White House Correspondents' Association to not invite a comedian it looks like to appease the president. And there's already so much erosion in faith in journalism, especially corporate journalism. It doesn't do them any favors either. There should be a comedian there. The fact that there's not a comedian there is injustice. It looks like they're trying to kiss his butt and appease him the only way they could get him to go. And inviting a mentalist is so pathetic and so sad, a sad point in the history of, I think, the White House Correspondents Association and anybody who attends that dinner and journalism in general. It's really bad for America and bad for democracy, especially because he's tried to cancel comedians. He canceled Colbert. He tried to cancel Kimmel, and he couldn't. And that was a very important inflection point in the past year that he couldn't get rid of Jimmy Kimmel, yet his FCC head who tried to do that, he'll be there. Brendan Carr will be there, but no comedian, Jessica. It's terrible. All right, Pete Dominic, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it. Do you appreciate it? Did you appreciate that? Was that worth? It's almost 5 minutes. Sorry about that. Is that worth sharing? All right. Let's get to something more important. Not that that wasn't. Obviously, it is important, and everything around the White House Correspondents' Dinner is. But here is, okay, this is Josh Rogan, the foreign policy analyst and columnist I sometimes play here. I think he's a pretty smart guy. Don't always agree with him in the past, but he certainly seems pretty normal and responsible and smart in this day and age with everything that's happening. And he was on Piers Morgan with a couple crazy MAGA people. And he had this to say, this nuance about why it's important to understand national security and diplomacy and more when talking about raiding Iran uranium storages.
How do we get at that nuclear dust that Trump keeps talking about, if that's even possible? Well, there's only one way, and that's through diplomacy and a negotiation. And if anyone thinks that anyone would be stupid enough to send American men and women into some subterranean dungeon, which is heavily guarded by Iran's most elite forces, to drag 1,000 canisters of highly volatile nuclear material while having some sort of firefight. Like, I don't know what you're smoking or what movie you're watching, but that's not a real thing, despite the fact that, yes, some plan exists in some special forces vault somewhere. That's not a good idea. Let's pray that doesn't happen, because it's not going to go well. So if we want to have a nuclear agreement with Iran, we have to have a nuclear agreement with Iran. And that's the only path out of this. And that's why it's so shocking and so terrible that our diplomatic engagement is so obviously incompetent.
Yeah. Just, I think, great analysis, and should be said if anybody's talking about that potential operation. Okay. Should have seen the faces of the MAGA people on the panel. Let's get to the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, who a lot of people think will likely run for president. He's so folksy. Sounds like Gomer Pyle, but always makes a lot of great points. Here he is wearing a shirt, by the way, that says Andy Beshear Podcast. Seemed kind of goofy.
And you all know I'm not speaking my mind and my disapproval of President Trump because he's a Republican. It's because the things he's doing are bad for the people of my state, and I think bad for the people of the United States. His refusal to focus on lowering prices, tariffs that have increased prices, this war that he didn't even explain to the American people in a State of the Union, 4 days before launching it, has raised prices even more. I'm worried about that person that is one paycheck and one bill away from not making it. And this president is hitting more and more and more of those people. I think about the soybean farmer that had to burn their crop this year and wonder if they're going to have any market to send it to next year. I worry about the rural hospital that's already thinking about the staff they have to lay off, and that Kentucky woman that has to drive an hour and a half to give birth. I mean, I am being as vocal as I'm being because this president is causing more damage to the people of this state, and I think the people of the United States, than any president in my lifetime, and we need him to stop.
Yeah, we need him to stop. Well, another person who is being considered a presidential candidate is Senator John Ossoff. He's currently running for re-election in the Senate in Georgia, and he was on MS Now, and Jen Psaki asked him about it, and he was unequivocal, which means nothing, but still, here it is.
In the ring for president, you're running for president. Does that chatter reached your inbox yet?
I've heard some of that. I have zero interest in running for president in 2028. I love serving the state of Georgia. I've got 2 young daughters. And to be honest with you, I think that the 2028 fantasy football risks distracting us from the urgent task at hand. If we do not restore checks and balances in these midterm elections, I don't know that we have a free and fair presidential election in 2028. So let's keep our eyes on the ball, folks. We need to win decisively in Georgia, in every battleground state, and in every competitive U.S. House district this fall. And folks out there, ask yourselves whether you are doing what you need to be doing right now. It's a collective effort. All of us need to be taking action in defense of our republic.
Senator Jon Ossoff up for re-election, one of the most targeted, if not the most targeted, Democratic senator in the country right now.
Did I mention it's electjohn.com?
You mentioned it a few times,
okay.
But there you go.
Yeah.
Third time's a charm. Thank you for being.
All right, third time's a charm, whatever. There's Jon Ossoff. Here's more Jon Ossoff now. Now here he is on the Senate floor doing his job as senator and everybody's male crush.
Mr. President, think of the retired Georgia teacher who had paid over $100,000 into a cancer policy, only to be diagnosed with cancer and have her insurance claims denied. Think of the Monroe County mother of 3 diagnosed with cancer who needed a liver transplant, was told she had 6 to 12 months to live, and had to fight her insurance company because her claim was denied. Or the thousands of Georgia children who have had their claims for needed health care denied. This amendment will ensure that this legislation prevents insurance companies from denying or delaying medically necessary health care for the American people. Let's pass this amendment and protect Americans' health care. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Jon Ossoff on the Senate floor. I like it. Wanted to share it. He's good. He's very good. Very good. All right. Let's go to CNN, where James Tallarico is running for Senate in Texas, was on, making so much sense as always. I loved this. Jake Tapper is the host. And he asked Tallarico about this news from a federal appeals court, this judgment that is upholding the Texas law requiring the 10 Commandments in classrooms.
Republican Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, your other possible opponent this November, he said, quote, "This is a major victory for Texas and our moral values. The 10 Commandments have had a profound impact on our nation, and it's important that students learn from them every single day," unquote. What's your response to Ken Paxton there?
Well, I'm not sure if Ken Paxton is in a place to lecture us on moral values. You know, my granddad was a Baptist preacher in South Texas, and when I was real little, he told me that Christianity is a simple religion. Not an easy religion, he would always clarify, but a simple religion, because Jesus gave us 2 commandments to follow: love God and love neighbor. And there was no exception to that second commandment. My faith teaches me to love my neighbor as myself, not just my neighbors who look like me, not just my neighbors who vote like me, not just my neighbors who pray like me. I'm called to love all of my neighbors the way I love myself. That includes my Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh, agnostic, and atheist neighbors. I don't want anyone forcing their religion down my throats. I certainly don't want the government forcing a religion down my throat. And so why would I do that to any of my neighbors? In the Texas House of Representatives, I have been a vocal critic of Christian nationalism. I'm a Christian, but I know that the most dangerous form of government is theocracy, because the only thing worse than a tyrant is a tyrant who thinks they're on a mission from God. And I've also been the most vocal defender of the separation of church and state. I was raised to believe that separation in our First Amendment, in the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause, is a sacred boundary that doesn't just benefit the state, doesn't just benefit democracy, but it also benefits the church, because when the church gets too cozy with political power, it loses its prophetic voice. So I think this is an unconstitutional decision. I also think it's a deeply unchristian decision, because we are supposed to be loving all of our neighbors, particularly our neighbors of other faiths.
Oh, I want to share that far and wide with all the MAGA Christians and Christian nationalists, and just to put it out there for them to see a different point of view. Here is Governor Tim Walz on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Jimmy asked him something about why the federal government or the administration ordered all of those federal troops into Minnesota.
They wanted to get a response from people that created violence so that they could use the Insurrection Act. I mean, this guy's an authoritarian, and that was his goal.
And boy, so much credit to the people of your state for the way that they responded to that. It really was. They couldn't have
handled it better than they did. Now, of course, what happened, we all know what happened. 2 Minnesotans were killed by ICE officers. Are those officers, where do we stand on the investigation?
Well, they whisked them out of Minnesota. I assume they're working somewhere else, and there's countless other examples. They lied about the gentleman who was shot in the leg, and thank God for video. I used my executive authority to launch here a few weeks ago a truth commission where we're gathering all of this. We're going to bring them back and hold them accountable for what they did.
Do you even know who they
I don't know.
Do you know their names? Do you even
Some
know?
of them. Some of them we do not. And I think what you saw the most egregious examples. There were hundreds of examples of this. We had 60 of our children gone. It took weeks. We didn't know where they were at. And just countless from, little microaggressions to this week, the Hennepin County attorney charged 2 of them. They just pulled somebody over by gunpoint randomly on the street, decided they didn't want to do anything and drove away. Thank goodness. I think that person had a dash cam, but we don't know yet. But the good news is we'll capture all that. Attorney General Ellison will go after it, but no cooperation from the federal government whatsoever.
Unbelievable.
Not sharing
really
information. And that is so unusual for any of these types of situations. We always share information, but...
And what a terrible message it sends to the ICE force. It's almost as if you can do anything you want and nothing's going to happen.
Well, that's what they were told, and that's what they were hearing. I mean, the minute after it happened, DHS Secretary Noem was, you saw it with your own eyes, calling the folks terrorists, saying you could do whatever, and then they whisk them out of there and nothing happened. This is a very dangerous situation where the federal government literally weaponized against citizens, and nothing would happen. And I said this whole time, where are the don't tread on me people? Because we were sure the hell getting tread on in Minnesota. And
yeah, good. I like it. I like that. Okay, now I want to share with you the Canadian Prime Minister, who everybody loves. He was asked a question by a bumbling reporter, and, well, I don't think you need any more setup. It's a real good answer. From Canada's Mark Carney.
What if this alcohol thing becomes more than an irritant? It's look,
it's an irritant? Yeah. 50% tariff on steel, 50% tariff on aluminum, 25% tariff on automobiles, all the tariffs on forest products. Those are more than irritants. Those are violations of our trade deal. Okay?
Okay, boss man. All right. All right, well, let me get to my conversation with Dr. Kendi. Sorry, no comedy clips again today. Didn't get to it. Late night, early morning. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your subscription. If you like what I'm doing and you can pay more, that would be awesome. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. It's a one-man show. Nobody's getting rich over here, but I do appreciate so much those of you who support me and allow me to do this work, which I love so much and feel so purposeful doing with your support every day here on Stand Up. Go to StandUpWithPete.com, and I don't know why I plugged my website, Substack, and all the rest. Now, let's get to my guest. Dr. Ibram X. Kendi is an author. He is a scholar. He is a very popular figure in politics and conversations and lessons about race in America. He's an anti-racist activist, a historian, author of, I think, dozens of books, because he's done all these children's books now as well. In 2019, the New York Times referred to him as one of the country's most in-demand commentators on racism. He was on Time's 100 most influential people of 2020. By the way, I'll be talking to one of the most influential people of 2026 on Monday, Shannon Minter, who's the legal director for the National Center for LGBTQ Rights. But back to Dr. Kendi. His new book is so important, just like all of his work. It's called Chain of Ideas, The Origins of Our Authoritarian Age, already a New York Times bestseller. He argues brilliantly that we must work across race and class lines to eradicate social ills and eliminate fascism, says the New York Times. Named one of the most anticipated books of 2026 by the New York Times, Oprah Daily, Lit Hub, Foreign Policy, and The Millions, which apparently is an outlet. And I really love Dr. Kendi and this book, and you can watch this interview on my YouTube and Substack at Stand Up with Pete. At the top of the interview, his audio is a little bad because the microphone was lower. I asked him to bring it closer, and then it stops having that sound that you hear here at the top and gets way, way better. Just a note here as we start. Let's do it. And look who I've got. Big guest, big deal. Award-winning author and historian who has been on tour with his huge new book, Chain of Ideas. Congratulations, sir. I am so glad to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me. Really, congrats on the book and the tour and everything you're doing.
Of course. Thank you, as always, for having me.
Yeah, I got to start with a personal question. And we're not friends, but I've interviewed you several times. I have a lot of respect for you, and I feel bad that I never reached out to you because for a while you're targeted and attacked, and it was, I'm sure, really bad. I can't imagine how you and your wife and your family navigated that. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I know that wasn't you weren't looking for that, but I was like, I never reached out to that guy that whole time, and I felt a little bad when I was thinking about it. How are you doing?
I think I'm doing fine. I mean, I think it's interesting to navigate a situation when you're getting attacked and facing takedowns and character assassinations because of the effectiveness, so to speak, of your work.
Right. That's why.
And so it's a weird feeling, so to speak, because it's awful going through it, but at the same time, my wife actually tells me if folks aren't coming at you, then you probably aren't doing anything.
Yeah. That being said, I mean, I won't belabor it, but Ted Cruz, Tucker Carlson, Sam Harris. I mean, so many people attacking you for a lot of the same kind of arguments and so on. I won't even raise any of them, but it means that you're effective. Sure. So that's a compliment. But I mean, it also puts your family in danger. I'm sure you felt unsafe at times, maybe more than not. It's horrible that happened.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have to take precautions, and I wish that as a scholar of racism, which is affecting almost everyone, I wouldn't necessarily have to take precautions, but unfortunately, this is reality.
One question that I'll raise that some of your critics say is that you somehow don't debate. A lot of people say that desperately want you to debate them so they can get mileage off of an appearance with you, obviously, and then they're going to edit it and whatever. But I also accidentally watched a recent interview that you did as part of this press tour with some guy where it was a debate. It was embarrassing for him in my mind, and I don't know how that happened, how he got on the schedule. But you also have debated plenty of other people. You've always been in debate with those who are critical of you, your ideas, and so on, is my understanding. But what is your answer?
Well, I mean, it's precisely what you stated. That I'm not going to what one would call a debate, engage with somebody to more or less elevate their own standing, and I'm certainly not going to debate whether Black people are inferior with anyone, and I'm certainly not going to debate whether racism persists. I mean, that's like debating whether the Earth is round.
Yeah, it's surprising that those questions are still being asked and being raised. But, I mean, per your book, explains a lot of why certain ideas, some of the most pernicious and dangerous ones, are now the most popular. Let's get to it. Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, the new book is Chain of Ideas, The Origins of Our Authoritarian Age. It's so good. It's so well researched, and it's super important. And the way that you wrote, obviously you do a ton of research. I mean, there's hundreds of pages or thousands of rather notes in the book. So that's really important. But I like the way that you laid it out. Talk a little bit about how each chapter is laid out and how I think sometimes we in American audience thinks about racism. They often think about white and black, and that's one cul-de-sac and the wrong one to be in. But racism is all over the world and always has been, and you explore as it is today and yesterday in every chapter of this book. Tell us how you chose to lay it out.
Sure. So yeah, Chain of Ideas is a history of the reemergence of what's known as Great Replacement theory. And this is a political theory that suggests that there are these globalist elites who are enabling peoples of color to displace the lives, livelihoods, even electoral power of white people who apparently need authoritarian protection. And I've actually documented how that racist theory has mutated into saying that, frankly, any disadvantaged group in any country or minoritized group is apparently displacing or replacing the majority or the privileged group, so in writing this history, I decided to organize it around the building blocks of Great Replacement theory, or these 10 ideas that form the chain of ideas. And so each of the 10 sections are set around a particular idea. And then each section is set in a different country. And so it's a truly global history, but I also constantly referencing back through time so people can see the origins, of each of these ideas.
So many of the purveyors of the propaganda of Great Replacement theory have done it for pretty stated reasons. They didn't always call it Great Replacement theory, by the way. That's a fairly new terminology. But the idea has been around for a long time. Your examination of the idea is fascinating and really important because it really does help explain why we are at each other and killing each other and jealous of each other, and where it comes from and where it's and why it's all nonsense, and how the world could be such a better place if we didn't buy into this propaganda and these identity corners. So talk to us a little bit about how the propaganda began and how it eventually did get this name to the point where they were chanting, "They will not replace us" in Charlottesville, as you talk about.
Sure. So it was actually named by a French novelist in 2011 named Renaud Camus, who imagined that African migrants who were mostly Muslim were coming and invading Europe and displacing white Europeans. And I use the term invasion because that's a term that was used in 2011 and a term that is widely used by Great Replacement theorists around the world.
Every day,
exactly.
All day, every day, there's an invasion, all types of invasions too. I mean, they're coming from everywhere, and they're going to eat your cats and dogs. I mean, it's not only an invasion. The thing that the invaders are going to do would be hilarious if it wasn't so fucking terrifying and dangerous. Pardon my language.
Exactly. And another word for invasion is war. So there's also this construct that there's a war apparently against white people. There's a war against men. Apparently, there's a war against Christians. Apparently, you have people like Vladimir Putin claiming there's a war against heterosexual Christians that queer people are waging and trying to displace the traditional values. And so the reason for this is you have these politicians who are trying to get people to believe that their lives are under attack, that their livelihoods are under attack, that their cultures, that their nation is being eroded and destroyed. And the reason why they want people to believe that is so that these very politicians could then turn around and say, I will be your protector. I will be your savior. Now, in order to protect you and save you, I need to take away your rights and freedoms. So then it becomes this road to authoritarianism.
That mic is hanging down by your shirt. Bring it up a little bit, because when you rub it, it's like, and I want to hear you perfectly clear. There you go.
Oh, it's better.
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, and it's so convincing, these ideas. Talk about how they are so convincing, especially just this idea of zero sum. You win, I lose. It's always been BS. You can debunk it really easily, but man, are people convinced? I mean, frankly, I think the scariest statistic I've learned in American vis-a-vis culture and race and racism is that a large majority of white people polled years ago, and certainly now, and definitely during the civil rights era, but recently, they think whites think we're more discriminated against than black folks. How do we get there? How do we possibly get there?
Well, part of that is the third link in the chain of ideas, which is that people should imagine that racism is interpersonal discrimination, meaning what's happening to me as an individual. So even if white people are far and away less likely to be unemployed, if I feel that I didn't get that job because I'm white, it allows me to then claim, apparently, that white people are the primary victims of racism, because we're not looking at data. We're not looking at group data. It allows a person to say whatever is happening to me as an individual, apparently I can generalize. But in terms of the zero-sum story, indeed, that's a very critical element of great replacement theory, trying to convince groups that as other groups gain, they lose. As other groups become more powerful, they become less powerful. When in fact, all sorts of studies show, for instance, that equitable policy in the United States benefited, let's say, Black and brown people, but it also benefited the vast majority of white people too. That's not necessarily something that people know, because when we create these policies, people assume they're only, let's say, for let's say Black people, not knowing that they're ultimately going to help them too, because we should all want to live in a society where there's equal opportunity. We should all want to live in a society where your pedigree or your ancestry or your parents' wealth doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is your work ethic and your talent. We should all want to live in that type of society, and it benefits the majority of people, except those who have pedigree and wealth.
Yeah, you use as often we do, the example of employment. And I feel like the best example, or maybe the most pernicious one, is crime and how we feel about crime. I live in one of the safest communities in America, Rockland County, just north of New York City. Very little violent crime. And when there is violent crime, it's almost never a Black person attacking a white person. And when it is, it's well covered, overcovered, right? And we know the statistics, of course. You're far more likely to be in a dispute or a violent attack by someone of your same race. But that doesn't matter. Data doesn't matter. Facts don't matter, because even in the safest neighborhood in the world, in one of the safest neighborhoods in the country, a lot of my white neighbors feel unsafe. Why do they feel that way when there's no violent crime to speak of that they could even cite?
I don't know why, but this reminds me of a scene in Chain of Ideas in which I'm writing about a young white person who came across a website, and on that website there were all these quote unquote Black on white crimes, and it was just case after case after case after case.
Is it called the Drudge Report? And all of 1990 through 2000, I mean, that website used to be like race baiting. So every time there was an incident, it was top line. So sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, there's so much of that. Go ahead.
Exactly. And what was ironic is this young white person was viewing this site, and you view the site, you assume that the vast majority of white people who are being harmed by Black people, when in reality, the overwhelming percentage of white people who are harmed by other white people.
Yeah.
So the more he viewed this site, the more he came to believe via great replacement theory that white people were facing a genocide at the hands of quote unquote Black criminals. And so he decided he was going to defend the white race. And so he got his gun and went to a church in Charleston, South Carolina, entered into a Bible study and shot, almost a dozen Black people. I'm talking about Dylan Roof. So this theory is an incredibly dangerous theory.
I mean, that's one example. You also cite plenty of other examples, from Oslo to Christchurch to obviously the shooting in Buffalo against Black folks in the grocery store, the shooting in El Paso against Hispanic folks, and obviously people probably remember the shooting at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. And these are all people who were radicalized and bought into some version of the Great Replacement here. As a matter of fact, many of them cite the dude in Oslo. I don't say their names. You can, but the dude in Oslo as like kind of one of the people who popularized acting on it. in a violent way, I think, right? I mean, all these different places are all, you write about them all.
Yeah, and so some people, I think you have some less extreme people who believe that those other people are taking their jobs or their culture or their nation. But the most extreme form of great replacement theory is that they're taking our lives. And so that's why you have presidents describing immigrants as animals and rapists. That's why you have elected officials classifying Muslims as inherently terrorists. And so it makes people fear Black people, Muslims, immigrants, and feel as if they need an authoritarian strongman to protect them, which then gives this person the ability to erode democracy.
I feel like, again, people are pretty rightly focused on their community and their country when it comes to this, but you go above and beyond in this book to write about the rest of the world. And we can talk about right now, Brazil, France, Germany, India, Hungary. You write about all of them, how some version of this theory has been pervasive throughout Europe, especially as a result of migrants coming from North Africa and so on. You also do a good job of pointing out what percentage of the population they are, and yet people really still freaked out that they're going to lose their, I don't know, their tartans or their whatever they wear, their kilts or their crest. People have a family crest. I always am skeptical of them. Talk about Europe or anywhere, Brazil.
Well, I think to give people a sense of the politicians and political parties that are using different versions of great replacement theory, we're talking about the current prime minister of Italy, the former prime minister of Hungary, of course, Orban, the current president of Russia, the leading political party in Austria, the most popular political party in the UK, in France, the second most popular political party in Germany, the president of Turkey. You going over to Asia, the prime minister of India, the president of China, the fastest growing party in Japan, the former president of South Korea, going over to Latin America, the former president of Brazil, the current president of El Salvador, the current president of Chile, whose father actually was a Nazi lieutenant.
The current president of Chile's father was the... Well, that tracks. He didn't break that chain, apparently.
Nope.
Yeah, that is a really intimidating and scary list. How does the great replacement theory, how has it become so pervasive? How much of it just simply has to do with the world we live in, with social media? And it used to be, like many other ideas, fringe. And then it became so popular that it's on the top rated television shows. And then the president of the United States is spouting it nonstop. I mean, I remember first hearing the phrase white genocide from this dude I worked with at Sirius XM on the conservative channel. He's trying to convince me of this theory. I remember where I was. And I was just like, the elevator was closed. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. What are you talking about? White genocide? Mm-hmm. I think I might have even uttered good, but that's just me being self-hating and just messing with him. Like, it's such a ridiculous idea. But how has it become so popular? Why?
Well, I mean, if we think about the last 15 to 20 years, there have been a lot of complicated historical events that have happened. There have been a lot of situations in which people have been put in very difficult situations. So going all the way back to the Great Recession, to the migrant crisis in 2015, to terror attacks in Europe around that same time, to the COVID-19 pandemic, to the inflation that gripped the world after Russia invaded Ukraine. I'm mentioning these examples because at every step, when people did not really understand why these things was happening, great replacement politicians stepped in and said, they're happening because of those Black people, or because of those Muslims, or because those immigrants are coming to take your life or take your jobs. And it was consistent. And each country that I named has a historically disadvantaged or privileged or minority or majority group. And in each of those places, it's imagined that the Muslim minority in India, apparently, according to Modi, is displacing the Hindu majority, right? Or in the case of Hungary, Orban said for years that apparently immigrants were coming to destroy the quote unquote Christian natives of Hungary and Europe, even though Christianity is a fairly recent phenomenon in Europe. And so depending on the country, these politicians have been able to weaponize the fears and frankly, the racist and sexist ideas of people against them to chain them.
I feel that in all those countries, I pay pretty close attention, but you document it well. The rhetoric, the techniques, the propaganda, how it's all been used before, it's really bad. It's very overt. They don't hold back. But at the same time, coming back to America, it's nothing like this, dude. Because you talk about taking jobs and taking opportunity and replacing them. But this dude is talking about rape and drugs. They're coming here to rape, to eat your cats and dogs, to drug your kids. And what that creates is a kind of demonization of the other that is far more pernicious than they're just taking your job. Mm-hmm. And is it, I guess it's not the best question just to compare Donald Trump to all these other world leaders, from Le Pen to Orban to even Putin. But even Putin isn't this overt about these kinds of things, I feel like. I don't know. I don't speak Russian. But certainly our dear leader says this kind of thing nonstop on the campaign trail and nonstop on social media and everywhere else that he possibly appears. Isn't he far more worse than any of his current contemporaries? Much less most of historians' ghouls?
Well, I think one thing to read Chain of Ideas is to learn that so much of what this president has said has been said in other places. And so in a way, he is taking all of the worst elements of, if there is a quote, good element of great replacement theory from what people have said all over the world and are saying them all in the United States. So he's literally taking from people around the world. And because so much of these ideas predate Trump and Trump's emergence in 2015, or even his emergence on the scene with birtherism in 2011. And that's what I really try to document, like that other people wrote the playbook and refined the playbook, and he took the playbook to another level.
To a level that the people who wrote the playbook, like, don't, that's too much. It's too on the nose. And he's like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go all the way. I'm going to say the craziest shit you could possibly ever imagine. And he does every day.
And one of the reasons I just want to emphasize why this is important to other leaders is because they routinely engage in what I call in Chain of Ideas, orchestrated distancing. So there's a constant effort to express great replacement theory, which is an extreme, dangerous theory. It's a neo-Nazi theory, while simultaneously distancing oneself from being racist, from being neo-Nazi, so that they can make themselves electable. That is how they have been able to claim presidencies and prime minister positions and become the most popular parties, because they are able to use a dangerous theory and then turn around and claim that they're not racist.
Give examples of that. It made me think of how Republicans led by Trump during the campaign and then in the early administration went after anti-Semitism on campus, and yet looked the other way and all kinds of anti-Semitism all the time, and hired tons of anti-Semites and Nazis in the administration, hired them. One of the ideas about we learned from you, I certainly learned from you, and I'm proud to say I've practiced it, and I think about you all the time as a result. Anti-racism is about creating opportunities for other people that aren't in your social group. And I've tried to do that all the time, but they're creating opportunities for Nazis while then trying to claim that they're tamping down on anti-Semitism on campus. So say anything about that or any other example.
Well, I don't know of a better example, frankly, in which you have a a political party in an administration that is expressing a neo-Nazi theory. And just to give us some context, Nazi theorists position Jews in Germany as internal enemies, which is a term that, for instance, was recently used by a Republican politician to describe Muslim Americans. They describe Jews as internal enemies who are coming to annihilate us. So the concept of a genocide theory. So we have to annihilate them. We have to rid the country of them before they can do the same to us. And so that was a great replacement theory. Of course, in many cases now, the Jew is being positioned as a Muslim or black or an immigrant, but it's the same logic. And so for them to express a neo-Nazi theory and then claim that they are against the surge of anti-Semitism, and frankly use anti-Semitism as a cudgel to gain control of universities and colleges, which is the larger sort of point. And I think that that's what I'm showing in Chain of Ideas, that they're using this rhetoric not to protect people, not to protect Jews or black people or white Americans. They're using it to accumulate power.
You have this phrase in the book, and I've heard you use it in a couple of your talks, and now I can't remember it. I was on a walk listening to you, but talking about how these leaders and these propaganda convinces people to care more about that they have more privilege than others versus democracy and having power. So it's power versus privilege. And I think most of us, given the chance, would want the power that democracy can offer, not a few privileges that just make me feel like I'm better than the brown guy down the street. I'm making a little more than him. I got a little better car than him.
This is the final link in the chain of ideas. This is the idea that once these great replacement politicians can get a person to believe this idea, they have fully chained them. And this is the notion that one should be fighting for privileges provided by dictators instead of power provided by democracy. It causes people to believe that the most important thing for them, whether they're white or they're male, or they're Christian, is their privileges in society. So then the person, the authoritarian comes along and says, okay, I will protect that you have more than those other folks. But in order for me to do that, I have to essentially take your power. I have to erode democracy. And so to get people to consent to that, to get people to consent to their own domination is ultimately what great replacement theory has been doing.
To get people to consent to their own domination, their own destruction, their own demotion. I just wanted to use alliteration, but those are all applicable, I think, because you're actually losing by following that path. And you don't even realize it because you still feel somehow greater than, better than, or not taken advantage of or gotten over on, right? Is that the idea, I guess?
Yeah, that is the idea. And that is, frankly, the lesson that people should have taken from World War II. That's the lesson that people should have taken from Nazi Germany, that Hitler presented himself to Aryan Germans and to white Germans, I should say white Europeans who were non-Jewish in general, as their savior and protector. And then he engineered or incited a war that led to more white European civilians and soldiers dying than any other war in human history. And not even talking about the complete destruction of Germany, all of the bombing raids that Aryan Germans who he claimed he was going to protect had to suffer through. Not just the young people who in the end had to risk their lives defending, quote unquote, the homeland or the blood and the soil. So in the end, all sorts of Aryan Germans suffered unimaginably, in unimaginable ways, even as Hitler claimed he was there to protect them. And so I think it's critically important, for people to realize that in the end, when you claim, or I should say, fight to protect your privilege instead of your power, that's what ultimately happens.
over and over and over again. You say we should have learned this after World War II. We should have learned after a genocide, Holocaust. We should have learned after slavery. But history does repeat itself. And we are here, which is sadly why you've, written this book, because this theory has been pervasive throughout human history. You document it well in different countries, and it's back. And it's really popular in the most terrifying way. And, we also just should mention, obviously, great replacement theory also can be oppressive to women and LGBT folks and other marginalized, discriminated against communities. And talk a little bit about gender and sexual orientation.
So let me give an example. So we talked about the most extreme great replacement theory was just this idea that there is this white genocide happening. And so we talked about that they've imagined that quote unquote black criminals, quote unquote Muslim terrorists, and quote unquote invading immigrants are carrying out this white genocide. But there's another group that they argue are carrying out the genocide of white people. And that is those childless cat ladies, or those white women who are supportive of abortion rights or reproductive freedom, or those white women who decide to only have 1 or 2 children, because they argue that these white women are not having enough children to replace and grow the white race. And so therefore they are contributing to the genocide. They are the reason, apparently, why there's low birth rates among white people. And so some of the most vicious statements that I quote in Chain of Ideas are meant for white women, and others are meant for queer people, particularly queer white people, who also, they argue, are not contributing to the growth of the white race and therefore are engaging and contributing to the genocide.
And I guess just not worth even mentioning to those folks, but if you really wanted white women or any women to be having more babies, you would support policies that would provide them with the ability to afford to have a child and to feed it and house it and send it to school and get it health care and so on. America doesn't do that. America hates that idea, unlike a lot of other civilized countries. All right, the epilogue is inspiring and hopeful and optimistic, and so are you. Like, you are a guy who is filled with joy, who loves his family, who loves his work, and who seems to love life. I mean, that's what I've always gotten from you in our talks. Your books are your work, but you are, I feel like, a half glass full guy. You've also overcome a tremendous amount of your life. Black in America is one thing, but cancer, when you're how old? Stage 4 colon cancer. Not to mention, I mean, you write these amazing books and gain all of this respect as a result of being so influential and effective. You're targeted. It can't have possibly been easy, any of it, but yet I'm still making my assumption that you seem like a happy guy.
I mean, if there's anything that fuels me on a daily basis is trying to contribute to the creation or the recreation or the spread of a society where we can all have joy, right? There's so many people who are not joyful right now because of the conditions that they're being forced to live in. And to me, there's nothing more beautiful, right, than seeing another human being joyful. And so at the same time, I'm trying to transform conditions that steal our joy. I'm also trying to guard my own joy, if you know what I mean.
I do. I think I do. And I think I'm glad to hear that. So tell me where you think we could potentially go in a positive way. I mean, I tend to think, this is ridiculous, I know, and I know it's because I've had a good life and I see things maybe a little bit too positively, but I remember what it was like when Barack Obama was campaigning. I remember the mood in the country when he won. And I kind of feel like there are hallmarks of that with Zohran Mamdani in New York City. And I feel like, you know, AOC or John Ossoff or other inspiring leaders, and leaders can inspire you to do a lot of the wrong things, but we have seen inspiring, positive people lead this country in both the government and the private sector in other places. And so I'm hopeful for the future of our country in many ways. I don't think any of it's guaranteed. I think we have to work super hard. And that's why I'm so glad to get the opportunity to talk to you and that you're still pumping out the work that you do. But talk to me a little bit about how you see a positive future for your family.
Indeed, I certainly receive hope from some of the leaders we have, many of whom you named. Even on my tour for Chain of Ideas, I had the ability to be in conversation with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who continuously inspires me. The mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, who also is someone who.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. When you were saying nice things, I just thought that you were just with him, and I thought it was funny that yesterday, like you were talking to the mayor of Chicago, and today you're talking to me, and that's got to be like an energy, like a real drop for you. And I really yesterday is the mayor of Chicago, and then this guy. But tell me about, him and other inspiring leaders. I shouldn't have interrupted you for that sloppy joke.
Well, what I'm saying is these are leaders and similar to the leaders that you named who see us all, right? We're all seen by them, no matter our background, no matter our struggles. They're truly trying to build a society that's healthy for all of us. And they have incredible amounts of courage and conviction. And that certainly inspires me. And also I would say that in the end, in Chain of Ideas, I call for us to have an understanding of the chain of humanity. That if the chain of ideas causes us to see different ethnic or religious or cultural or even racialized groups as gaining as we're losing or coming to destroy us or invading us, then the chain of humanity allows us to see ourselves in the differences of other people, allows us to recognize that we're all connected, allows us to see that as they gain, I gain. As they become more powerful, we become more powerful. And the more we become more powerful together, then we can take on the oligarchs. And as we're taking on the oligarchs, we also realize that the weakest link in the chain of humanity are those folks who don't think they're connected to the rest of us.
Yes. And that is why we need to keep linking to each other and creating community wherever we can. And there's a lot of hope too to be drawn from. And I think you stopped in Minneapolis. That must have been a special stop for you on your tour. Just mention how that was given what happened in that city.
Well, to be in Minneapolis and to learn about the level of solidarity that was built there, that remains there, in which people no longer, if they ever did, saw their strangers as dangerous or saw their strangers as danger. They actually saw their neighbors as building blocks to their own freedom, to their own rights, to their own protection. And saw the invading federal government, who was presenting itself as a savior or protector, as actually those who were seeking to harm. So they got it, and I think that they inspired me certainly for the rest of the tour.
That's awesome. That's great, and I am so grateful to have you here. I hope everybody goes and gets the book, Chain of Ideas: The Origins of Our Authoritarian Age, and get all of Dr. Kendi's work, buy all of his books, and learn. I've learned so much from you over the years, and I'm so grateful that I get the opportunity to talk to you. Congratulations on the book, the tour, the family, the career, all of it, man. It's great to see you. I really appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you for having me, as always.
How about that, Dr. Ibram X. Kendi? Get the book, and thank you for listening today and all of this week or any time that you did. I can't do it without you. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Go give a rating and review on Apple, Spotify, and subscribe on Substack and YouTube at Stand Up with Pete. Those are the places I promote. You can find me on Threads and Blue Sky and Facebook and even still over on Twitter. A lot of people watch live during my live interviews for some reason still. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me all week, and I appreciate you. I love you. It was a great time at last night's hangout. Sorry I was late today. You bumblebees are the greatest because you listen all the way to the end. JohnCarroll.org. ladies and gentlemen, go stream and download his music. We support him because he's the greatest, of course. He writes and performs all of the music right here on the show. That's it. Talk to you later. Be the change you want to see. Take care. Find joy. Be suffering. Get outside.
Keep right on ignoring us if we keep things right. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. Alright, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.